What's up, everybody? This is a very special episode of We Are One, You Are Two, a PlayStation and video game podcast. This is our developer interview episode. We've been doing these recently. I know. I'm your host, Rob Fanzo, joined once again by Matt Rhodes.
Heyo.
We're just going to cut straight to the chase today. We've got an awesome interview with a Kickstarter project, Project Sense, and we've got the developer himself here, Ben Widdowson. And so we're going to go ahead and talk to him. So we're just going to cut over to that and let you guys enjoy. We're super excited today. We have Ben or Benjamin Widdowson. I should have asked you beforehand. You prefer Ben or Benjamin?
Ben is fine. Ben is fine.
Ben is fine? Okay, great. We have him with us here today, and so we're going to talk a little bit about his game Project Sense. It is a Cyberpunk Ghost Story. So, Ben, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do it.
So, I guess really, you know, we've talked a little bit off air about this. You've got a Kickstarter currently going on. But before we get into all of that, we always like to get to know our developers a little bit. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself? This is, I think, is this your first game? And if it is, you know, what made you decide to leap into trying this out? How long have you been working on this? What made you switch career tracks from where you were before? I know that's a bunch of questions, but, you know, we're kind of curious to know a little bit about you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's... I've actually got kind of a wild ride of a story for the past couple of years. So I've always wanted to be in game development since I was a little kid. I was 5 when I got Mega Man 5 for the Game Boy and Ninja Gaiden on NES. And I think, like, looking through the books, that was kind of the instant that I knew, like, oh, I want to make characters for video games. That was the only thing I ever really knew I absolutely wanted to do. I ended up going to Savannah College of Art and Design and graduated in 2010 with a BFA in illustration that was completely useless. And spent the last, 10, almost, getting close to 10 years now, just doing my best to break in. It's been an odd experience. The game industry, the AAA game industry in particular, is unhealthy. Maybe I guess is a good way to put it.
I would agree with that. I agree with that.
It's difficult. It's really hard to break in, and I've got friends in high places in concept art, and lots of friends like me that are in low places and can't get in at all. And it was just it was rough. So I worked on a lot of projects that never came to fruition. I did stuff with a big publisher that ended up getting canceled and destroyed, and and that, of course, you can't use that in your resume. So why would you be able to? No. So I moved. I ended up living in Seattle for about 5 years. That's where I met my wife, and I worked for a studio called Daily Magic Productions. They were part of. I guess not part of. They were contracted out by Big Fish Games to make the hidden object puzzle adventure titles.
Oh, okay.
So I worked with them for about a little over 4 years. Good experience, and I became very close with the CEO of that company and learned a lot there. I ended up within maybe a year or so of working there. At first, I was just doing kind of cleanup, like art cleanup stuff. And within about a year, I was handling 30, 40 concepts a month for their environments, for the locations in the game. And then within a couple weeks of doing that, I ended up being put into positions to write the games. So over those about 3.5 years, I wrote close to 16 of the titles, all the core narrative and stuff, and was very involved in the process of creating those games, and kind of like dulled my teeth there, I guess you could say. I bit off a lot more than I thought I would be able to, and did pretty well. And they recently decided to not cut ties with Big Fish, but definitely be done with them and move on and do their own thing. So it wasn't like a negative. It was more them deciding we wanted to go somewhere else. And when that happens, when you stop working with a big publisher that gives you a set amount of money to make a certain amount of games, some downsizing has to happen. And I was the only American person working at the studio. Everybody else was over in Kaliningrad, Russia, or the Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
My 4 years of experience was not the right kind of experience for I guess the AAA industry out here, because they're very team oriented, and they want to see people that not just match them stylistically or thematically. You have to have that team dynamic with a lot of these places. That's what I've been told, and it was really difficult to get a position. So after I got laid off last May, I spent a solid 3 or 4 weeks whining about it to my wife, who at the time was in Hong Kong with her family, and she told me to shut up and just make a game. So I did, and that's where Sense was kind of born there. I'd been working on the IP for 5 years, about 5 years at that point, and now it's close to 6 years. So the whole world that Sense takes place in is something I've been developing for a really long time. It's my own little pocket thing, and I didn't have a good excuse why I shouldn't be developing a game, and I was broke. And Kay, my wife, had been saving up money at the time for all kinds of things, just the future, and she just said, "Here's 6 months of free rent. Do it and shut up and stop whining about it." And then I did it, and did everything myself for the first build. We went to Kickstarter in November and failed, and I learned a lot. So then we got a better coder, and tried again. And I think this time we did a much better job. So that's kind of the story so far, I guess. The very brass tacks version of it.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I know layoffs are pretty common. I mean, in the industry, and that's something you hear a lot about, especially even just from the AAA developers, let alone anybody else that's even smaller than that. So
yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare. It can you can either pull out of it and get somewhere real good and be one of those big names that makes a lot of money, or your life is kind of a mess. And I know a lot of people that gave up, and I'm just too dumb to give up. I think I know what I want, and I just can't. I'm from countryside Pennsylvania, so I'm not these soft LA kids out here.
You know what? You say countryside Pennsylvania. Matt and I are both from PA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where at?
Well, I grew up in Hanover, Pennsylvania, and I did in fact work at the Utz factory in the summers. And then my parents now live out in Carlisle, so nice. Southwestern Pennsylvania. That's I hate to say born and bred, but the older I get and the more I'm around big city, the more I'm like, I kind of miss it. I like it a lot. So
that's funny. Yeah, I mean, we're both from the Southwest PA area too, outside of Pittsburgh. So
okay, so yeah, we're actually pretty close to each other then when I'm visiting home. So it's
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm not one of these city folk, I guess you could say. It's a good way to put it.
Nothing wrong with that though.
No, I prefer it.
For sure. Can touch on a little bit on you talked about you were part of the writing staff for those games. How did that kind of help with what you're doing now?
Tremendously, actually, because I'm a horror fanboy, more particularly into Japanese and Asian horror and very old ghost story kind of stuff. And that studio we worked at was particularly, I mean, their bread and butter were the horror games for Big Fish. So it was always it was a lot of exercise in trying to make my ideas work within the game genre and then work for the audience too. Because I don't know if you guys are aware, but the Hoppa games are the general market for them is women aged like 35 to 60. It's always really difficult because you'll have busybody old ladies that are, and I don't mean that disparagingly, I mean just as a matter of fact, that they hate everything and they want everything changed, but then when you change something, they're still mad. And then you have the women that are just kind of happy with anything. So it was always really difficult to find kind of this balance of good critique and good feedback and then writing a good story, because you can't also go too deep into certain subjects. They don't like hyperviolence. They don't like gore. They don't like, but then at the same time, games that do that take those risks tend to do very well. So it's kind of, it was a weird market, and it actually kind of, it was really good training for me to figure out, because I've always been a writer. I've always been a pretty solid creative writer, and I've always enjoyed doing it. And you don't spend 5 years writing a massive universe without enjoying it to some degree. And
without living in it.
It was helpful. It's one of those things where I wish things would have been a little different before I was was laid off, or but in the end I got so much out of that job that I'm really thankful to Mariano over at Daily Magic and those experiences, because it was a big help, and I can't like quantify the specifics of which things work better. It's one of those things you spend 4 years writing for a market you don't understand or like, and then you learn a lot, you know.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the market. What would you say is the demographic of the market you're kind of shooting for with Sense?
Well, it's been a little contentious. The first, I don't know if you guys how long you've seen our game or anything, or how much. The first time we got some solid feedback on some jiggly aspects that, you know, I'm an old school gamer, I would say.
Yeah.
I love Masamune Shirow is my art hero. Everything he's ever done, I have all of the books, you know, all of the manga. I have every very rare novel of the light novels of Ghost in the Shell. And I've collected these things over years. I'm a huge fan of his. So I've always really respected guys and girls who can go, yes, here's a very serious story, but also here's some really nice boobs. So I knew that when I made my game, and I've been watching it's called a battlefield, the current battlefield of the gaming industry and where things are going visually, and it's all very safe and boring, and in my opinion,
I would agree.
And it gets old, and it's, you know, you see games like Nier Automata or the Japanese guys really picking up steam and doing things that people want, and it's being successful. I knew that in my heart, because those are the games I buy. I love Senran Kagura. I love Nier Automata. I like ridiculous, over the top games that are just fun.
You're preaching to the choir here, because I tell Matt all the time. I pretty much beat his head in last year, telling him how badly I needed him to play Nier Automata so that we could talk about it, because I had no one to talk to about it.
Yeah,
it was just a fantastic game.
Don't mention that again, because he'll just get more and more excited over this interview.
Well, and good. I'm glad, because it's guys like you and me, and girls too, because, you know, I can't discount enough how much feedback my wife. She's from Hong Kong, so the game, you know, has a lot of Hong Kong influence. But she's always here being like, I think about this, do this. So it's been a 2-person effort, really. And, you know, I'm 100% of the art, but she's really pushed in the right directions, and it's nice to be going, okay, if I put this character design in the game or this costume, I'm facing down a potential backlash or a potential problem, and then her to go, so what, do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, she's the little voice in my head that I always had, but she's actually saying it out loud. So it's, you know, that's the market I want, is people like me, people that grew up with the classic games. They like, you know, big, muscly, awesome dudes and really sexy women, and, you know, just fun. Just give me Conan the Barbarian, and I'll have a field day. But if you give me, you know, super safe, predictable thing that they're probably going to announce at E3 this year, I'm probably going to be really annoyed and not buy it.
Well, it's nice to have. It's definitely nice to have that. No matter how many backers you have on Kickstarter, it's nice to have that personal backer in home, right?
Yeah, it's always funny when some of the negative feedback I've gotten has been like, oh, typical male doing this male thing, and then I just kind of look at my wife and I start laughing, because it's like, I got permission, damn it. Right. She said it's okay.
She told me to do it.
Yeah, it's I wish I could just take a picture of her and be like, just post her every time, but she said no to that. So
yeah, right. There's got to be a line somewhere, I guess, right?
She doesn't want to reveal herself yet. So
now, you said she's from Hong Kong, and that's part of the influence of the game itself. Has she helped with the writing of it, or is that mainly you? Was there like a little bit of her influence, or?
So the writing is 100% me. I had kind of written the story, and I think I might have alluded to it in a post prior, that the game actually was originally just about Japan. And it was still cyberpunk, it was still the future, but it was about like Neo Tokyo. And it got very derivative. And it was that thing where I spent so long like agonizing on how to not make it just, you know, Ju-On the Grudge or The Ring, you know, done as a point and click kind of adventure game, that when she told me, she was basically just like, why not Hong Kong? You know, why not Cantonese stuff or Chinese stuff? And I was like, 'cause it's dumb. And then, you know, we started talking about it more, and she started telling me about these, you know, specifically Hong Kong horror story things. And I've always liked Hong Kong movies and cinema. So I had a little bit of an idea. You know, you had some of the Gordon Liu movies, but you guys are probably familiar with the Jiangxi, the hopping vampire. The guys with the talisman on the forehead. May from Overwatch, her Halloween costume last year was that, and that's a very old, ancient Chinese thing that is more prevalent in Hong Kong culture than Chinese, surprisingly. So she showed me all these things, and these like there's this voodoo culture, these curses. A lot of the ghosts are very similar because they come, Japanese, the yokai, the yurei and yokai come from, a lot of them come from ancient Chinese stories or ancient Chinese ideas. So, and then many of them obviously have their own Japanese specific thing, but specifically the ghosts come from ancient concepts that were brought over. So I saw these parallels and I was like, oh, okay, well, all the things I love about Japanese horror, I can achieve with the Chinese horror, but then I also get this really cool, unique thing that isn't being done. And I had just visited Hong Kong for the first time 2 years ago when we started really talking about this, and I fell in love with the city. It's disgusting, it's dirty, it's hot. There's too many people, but it's really cool.
What a sales pitch!
I highly. If you ever go, it's one of those things where if you're an autistic germaphobe like me, it is one of those things where you're kind of like, this is awful. But then when you go home, you're like, oh man, that was really cool. Actually, I want to go back. And then the second time I went back, I was actually, I really loved it. And I actually got to enjoy it that time more because I expected the things I was not ready for earlier. And, we're planning to move there in a few months now because some issues. And we just decided, it makes more sense to start the studio there and really like be surrounded in this every day while we're working on the game. And yes, the Kickstarter being funded was a huge part of that decision where we were just like, she's from there. Immigration stuff is its own bag of inappropriate for right now conversation. And we were just like, let's just do it. Let's go to Hong Kong and try this out. So we're going to be moving back there. And yeah, it was just that thing where I went, this is the way it needs to be. And her growing up in that culture, she's just shown me all of this stuff. But all of the research I try to do myself. She'll give me a direction. She'll tell me like the Chinese, or, she'll type out the actual like traditional Chinese text, and I'll have to figure out what these things are. She'll explain them from her point of view. And it gets this really, this unique thing that just like a random Westerner who likes this stuff could never get, because you get this perspective. I'm a Japanophile to a degree, and I love ancient Japan and Japanese like paranormal culture, so I really know it. And I've been there a number of times and researched this stuff, and I have good friends who are like big in the yokai and yurei, kind of research community that can always help me. But I didn't know anything about Chinese and the Hong Kong culture, so her teaching me this stuff it made it more exciting, and it let me put these things in the game in a way that I don't think you could do if you were an expert on it, and I don't think you could do if you didn't have somebody explaining it to you from a first-hand perspective.
Cool. Yeah, that's really cool to hear. So I guess maybe we can talk. I'm kind of curious a little bit about the Kickstarter, because I noticed that, like you said, this is your second time through it, and you learned a lot from the first time. I noticed that you've really put, or at least maybe I'm just blinded by my love for PlayStation Vita and PlayStation, but I've noticed you've pushed that a lot for the digital release. Has that always been kind of a goal for the Kickstarter? I know you have that as your stretch goal, but has that always been kind of where I imagine yourself winding up? Or naturally, I'm sure if you go beyond that, that's not a problem. But is that kind of where you were hoping all along to get if you made the initial backing that you were shooting for?
Absolutely, yeah. And my goal for years, has been to have a game on a PlayStation console. That was kind of like my measure of success. Not in a bad way. Anybody can put a game on PC, right? Anybody can put a game on itch.io or Indie Vault or any of those web stores and make it work. And you don't need a tremendous amount of early success to do that. You just have to have a game, and it can be good, it can be bad. We've seen that on Steam. You can have a lot of, you can just put anything out you want. And so when that a long time ago, that was a measure of success for me, is saying, okay, if I get a game on Steam, I've made it. As things shifted, I went, well, that's not really, anybody can do that, so what? Everybody's got a game on Steam, who cares? Even though I always wanted that PlayStation game, I always wanted to have that on my shelf as this is my Medal of Honor, But when PC publishing became easy and something everybody can do, I said, nope, this is where I will not consider myself successful unless a game is being sold through these markets. And that was my thing. Like I'm a bit of a PlayStation fanboy. I do have all the consoles, and I do try to play everything I can just for research and for fun. PlayStation's kind of my my homeboy. So I knew I had to get it there. And we decided to do it as a stretch goal for a number of reasons. If it was up to me, just spitballing kind of thing, I probably would have just included PlayStation and at least digital PlayStation into the original goal. Mm-hmm. And we kind of did last time. We did launch back in October, and we had an $18,000 goal, which included a lot of dev costs that we knew was going to come. We didn't succeed. We only made we almost made it past $9,000. And then the night before we decided to give up, we had somebody drop their $1,000 pledge. So we were like, you know what, we're good. this isn't working. We made it 2 weeks in, only getting 7,000. And I say that kind of douchily, only getting 7,000, but it's like when your goal is 18, you got to get somewhere. So that was kind of the idea. We just went, we talked about it. We were about a week away from the deadline, and we all just realized like this isn't going to happen this time. And most of it, I take the brunt of that failure myself because it was me, it was mine. Every part of that game was mine, and it just wasn't ready. And I was rushing and trying because my girlfriend, she's my wife now, but she was my girlfriend at the time. And I proposed to her the night before we launched the Kickstarter. So I was like, wow, I've got to do this for her. She's given me so much. She's I need to take care of her. This is my time to do the right thing. And so I think I rushed it for a lot of emotional reasons and not smart reasons. And I was trying to get it out. I just wanted to be successful. I had that pipe dream in my head of, we're going to hit like $100,000 in a week. It's going to be awesome. And then the reality sets in and you go, okay, well, so, I took about a solid 2 months off, not touching it. And just, after we failed, I told Joe, our publisher at Top Hat, and Andy Hahn, who's the co-composer for the Katawa Shoujo OST. He's our composer too. I told them both, I was like, I need some time. I've just got to take some time, got to really rethink this. I started immediately looking for a new coder, though. Nothing negative to say about our previous guy. It just didn't work out. He just, he couldn't devote the time that we needed to make things work. We decided to get the new guy. So I found the new guy whose name is Altan, and he's awesome. As soon as I found him and got him, I was like, look, I'm just letting you know I want you on this team, and we're going to, get you paid, but I need a break. So I took the break, took some time, worked solely on, commissions and freelance stuff, and really just took time to think about where I wanted this project to go and how I could show the idea off to people the best, like how I could get people to understand what it is I'm trying to get them to fund. Because if it was just a point and click adventure game or a hidden object game, I've worked on those enough that I could make it by myself in, 5 months without any help and just put it out and then just do big fish. But I wanted something bigger and better and cooler. And I knew that was where it had to go. So we put everything we had into it after that. I worked my butt off. We got roommates to help pay the rent. We've had a couple months that were pretty nuts and pretty rough. And relaunching the Kickstarter was like this. I was crapping my pants the whole first day, and then within 48 hours we got funded, and it was just like, oh, thank God. Like, this, at least there's a future for this. Like, it's not necessarily enough money to pay my rent. I'm still gonna have to work. It's not enough money to do all the things we want, but it means that there's actually a future for the project. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
Super exciting.
Now, you talked about dev costs a little bit. Does Sony charge you anything to list on their store, or is that something that like has to be dealt with, or like I have no idea of that aspect of it, and I was just wondering if you did.
I do know. So that's kind of the beauty and the best part about having this publisher. When Top Hat reached out to me, I was pretty shocked because I was just posting stuff up on Twitter myself.
I was going to ask you about Top Hat too, so that's good. Yeah.
So they're and the funny thing is they mainly do like adult erotic games and visual novels and stuff. And I won't dive too much into my disillusions with the AAA industry and the reasons for my disillusion, but it was that when they reached out to me, I was like, nobody else is going to reach out to me. And not that these guys are a last choice. I'd never heard of them before. And I was like, if they believe in this project, I'm willing to go with whoever believes in what I'm trying to do. Joe has been hyper supportive and, a friend on this and has really pushed to make it the best that he can. And he's also been, Johnny on the spot with a lot of things. He gave me a stipend to get me through the development of the demo back in October to help me finish up some stuff that I wanted to. So he was paying my bills for a couple of weeks. And this time they couldn't necessarily do that the second time because he needs to have some kind of income on it. They're very small. So when he came in, it was just great because I don't I know. I have a pretty good head for business. I can tell when someone's lying to me. I can tell when I'm being, taken for a ride. But, and like I said, you guys probably know, being from country, you don't take BS. You just kind of, I don't want the flowery business talk. Just tell me what you're going to give me and what I have to give you, and then we'll be done. And he's like that. He gets it. So he got that, and he knew that I'm not the best person to be, first of all, handling social media. I'm the last person that should be handling social media. And I'm also the last person that should be doing some of this the early talk business stuff, because I don't care. I don't care what the over-unders are. I'm just like, okay, how much do I get? How much do you get? What do I have to give you? When do I have to give it to you? Like, I really just want the answers. And so he's really good at all this negotiating, being friendly with these business people things. And having him on board has been such a godsend, because he's dealing with all of that stuff for me. So I can focus all of my energy on making the game and writing it and working on it. As far as the PlayStation stuff, I do know kind of secondhand experience, because when I worked at Daily Magic, I did do a little bit of this stuff. I do know there's fees, and I do know there are costs to it. Like, they don't just let you throw it up on there. But what I don't know is how that's handled, or what the actual numbers are. And I know it's probably different for different types of things. So if you're like in the AAA section, I guarantee you there's some ridiculous costs. But sure. If you're in the indie section, it's like, it's a cut of the profit. It's like 30% or whatever the number is,
Right. And Sony themselves has been really good about indie developers, so I'm sure there's some kind of like leeway with that.
Yeah, Joe made it pretty clear when I started talking to him about this, that getting it digitally on PlayStation isn't going to be a problem. He says it's simple. It's not particularly difficult. There are costs, but it's not a difficult thing. We just actually have to have the money aside to make sure that we can handle any kind of eventuality with it. The other thing is, people are really asking us a lot about the physicals, and we're in talks with East Asia Soft to handle that. But we just don't have an answer yet. And that was kind of the thing. Like, when I put these stretch goal versions for, PS4, Vita, and Switch, the $5,000 to me was to handle all those costs, like any kind of fees that would pop up, to take care of any kind of development fees for us, like for testing and stuff, dev kits, things like that. And then also like a limited run of physicals if we got to that point, just in case, because we just don't know. You could have everything scheduled and ready to go with, Nintendo or Xbox or PlayStation, for example, and then all of a sudden they could be like, oh no, we're not doing this because of X reason. You don't meet this criteria. Physicals are a harder thing, and I know Joe's been talking to these guys for a while, and it's so if anybody who's listening wants the physical version, just keep hammering East Asia Soft and let them know how bad you want it, so that they are more inclined. I have a good feeling though. Joe seems to be kind of positive about it. I just don't know, and I know that it's going to cost money either way. So that's why we did the stretch goals, because it was just we wanted to have this chunk of change here for everything that could possibly go wrong to be taken care of.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I know there are physicals. Digital seems to be on the rise, but I know a lot of people do love their physical copies. And I know even for myself with Ruiner and Next Machina, I was super excited when limited run games and special reserve games put out, tried to put out anyway for the past 2 weeks with Ruiner, the digital copy or the physical copy for sale. Yeah. They partnered up and did that. Because there's just some games I just love to have a physical thing of. So.
Well, I'm a straight up collector, so I if it's digital only, that's the only way to get it, I'll suck it up. But I'm willing to pay for physicals if I can afford it, and that's like, it just, to me, it's not the same. Maybe because we're probably all about the same age, 30 or so, and I'm too old. I can't stand the idea of not having it on a shelf.
Yeah, it's something I've come to grips with the PlayStation 4 more than I have any other console. I've kind of dealt with it a little bit better, but yeah, I'm very much, up until this point, I've been very much about the physical copies. I realize digital's slowly creeping into everything else, and I just can see with that Sony reporting and other things reporting every year more and more how digital sales are increasing. It's probably only a matter of time till it's a Netflix-like experience, I guess.
Thank you, normies. Thank you for being part of the hobby.
So is there anything else since you've talked a lot about the Kickstarter and the stretch goals, is there anything we need to know about the game itself that, people who are listening to this? Because I know the moment I saw it and I saw Cyberpunk Ghost Story, I didn't even need to read the rest of the page. That just appeals to me immediately. But is there anything we need to know about the game, or do you want people to know who are maybe on the fence about what backing it?
Yeah, sure. Like, and that was, I'm glad you say that, because the Cyberpunk Ghost Story was the hook for me. That was the thing where I was like, I know, like, I've been writing this world that I knew the paranormal existed in, and the question was, how do I get people to be excited about this? Because originally it was just Sense and then the Chinese name that I can't pronounce.
Oh, so that's not Sense Below. That's something totally different.
It does mean sense in the application that I wanted the English sense to be. It's that idea of you have that like gut feeling of something's wrong. So that's the direct translation, is like a foreboding feeling, and so that's what the Chinese means. So I wanted people to get that. Yeah. So I'm really glad you did. I'm glad that was the thing, because to my knowledge, and I've done a lot of research, and I wanted to pin this down, and I'm going to say it with a little bit of apprehension, because like if somebody proves me wrong, okay, please. But this, as far as I'm aware, is the first legitimately supernatural horror cyberpunk anything. Like, there's been things that have supernatural elements, there's been things that have like a ghost in them, but there's never been something that was aimed specifically to be a supernatural horror story in a cyberpunk universe. So I'm pretty proud of that. I actually get to say I'm doing something, at least mostly unique. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me wrong. But I've done, I spent a good month or two really looking into this and trying to find examples, and was pretty much unable to. So that's definitely what I wanted. And to everybody who's on the fence, maybe you're looking at the large-breasted women in the game and saying, is this like a hentai game, or is it like, just a pandering cash grab kind of thing? It is not. I promise you, if you've played the demo, you know that there is a relatively abrupt change that is hinted at early on in the demo, and then you get to that point where it's like, this is definitely a horror. So it is a love letter to the guys that made Fatal Frame. It is a love letter to Team Ninja, who I love. They're my favorite developer. They did Dead or Alive and Ninja Gaiden. They're my biggest influences, probably on game development wise. To Masamune Shiro, but it is absolutely a horror game, and every part of the game will be horror. We are absolutely having the sexy elements. I'm not shying away from that, because, my favorite thing of the Fatal Frame games, other than the actual like story and spooky stuff, is the costumes that you can unlock, especially Fatal Frame 5 that had the best ones. Having that kind of lighthearted thing thrown in there for replayability is part of the fun. You can only be so tense. And yeah, seeing a girl running around in a bikini while being chased by a ghost just makes it a little better, but only if you've beaten the actual scary game once. So you won't be able to unlock that stuff until you get through the game once. I promise you that. This is a straight horror game that just has a unique visual style. Yeah, that's my little promise to everybody.
Well, I like that as a bonus content kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Like that replayability.
Yeah, it's a reward for making it through the stressfulness of the story, and I also will promise that there are multiple endings. None of them will be happy.
That's perfect. That's my type of game right there.
Yeah. So this is straight up. I mean, if my favorite ghost story of all time is Yotsuya Kairan, which is the story of Oiwa out of Yotsuya, Japan. That's not a happy ending, and there's actually a little bit of a tie to that real life ghost story and into sense in a lot of ways. So I have to be really careful what I say. This is a straight up horror game. This is not going to leave you warm and fuzzy at the end, but once you beat it, there will be tons of unlockables. I can't promise how many, but I'm aiming for at least 12 unlockable costumes. I'm all about unlockables. That was my favorite thing of classic games, is beating the game and getting something cool out of it. So there will be a minimum of 3 playthroughs to unlock everything. So it's a straight up classic game and a classic horror game. So yeah, to the people worried that it's just going to be like boobies everywhere, but I promise you it's not. It's a nice little bonus, but it's not the whole thing.
Yeah. That's awesome, because I think that's one of the things I appreciate about Yoko Taro and Nier Automata when I played it last year was, without spoiling anything for anybody, although that's a year old, I loved some of the storylines, and I loved some of there is no happiness here. There is nothing necessarily positive that you get out of this world.
Exactly. That's kind of the thing, is like, I never understood in the past, I want to say 5 years, but I know it's been a lot longer. In the past few years, we've had this kind of weird overarching iron fist rule, where it's almost like you can't any amount of sexiness or lewdness or tongue-in-cheekness destroys the whole product for people. And they say you can't have this because it's supposed to be a serious story, or it's supposed to be this thing, or we as an industry have to be better. There's games from my lifetime. I'm old, but I'm not that old. It wasn't too long ago where you could have these things. You could have fun with your games. There's Fatal Frame is the best example. They've had bikini costumes in every single one of them, and it's still regarded as pretty much inarguably the best horror game series out there. I mean, it's so good. It's so fundamentally well done that you just go, so what? There's this aspect. You don't even have to get it, but it's there. You had action hack and slash games that are brilliant. Devil May Cry is just nothing but cheese factor, but then you can actually pay attention to the story and be like, oh, there's actually this pretty badass story here. Like, that's just a solid action story. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I don't know when it's going to change or if it's going to change, but I hope I can be on the forefront of helping it change back.
Yeah, I do think sometimes people do take themselves a little too seriously with some of that stuff.
I think that's a really good way to put it. It's a lot of people in this industry, and I know a lot of them, and I don't necessarily mean this in a bad way, but they definitely think of themselves as auteurs instead of just people that make fun things for a living. Like, I try to remember not to take myself too seriously, because ultimately my goal is to make a product that the most people possible can enjoy, but I want them to enjoy the product I'm making, not a version that they want me to make. Like, I want to show them, here's the hamburger I made. I hope you like it. Here's my creation. And I want them to like it, and I want as many people as possible to like it, and I want as many people as possible to buy my game. That'd be really nice. You'd be very much so helping me out with that. Thank you. But at the same time, like, you can't, if you idea committee everything into death, and to make sure that every possible market is 100% satisfied, you're not going to satisfy anybody. 9 times out of 10, people don't know what they're going to like. Mm-hmm. You have to show them cool things, especially things that haven't been done before. You have to show them, like, this is what it can be. And they might not like everything, but they might like some things. Some people will like everything, and some people will hate it no matter what. So I'd rather just go, here's my creation, take it for what you will. Corpse Party is a perfect example of that. I play every single Corpse Party game, and I walk away from it feeling horrible. I'm like sick, because I'm just like, that was just so depressing and awful. But they're good, and you get sucked into that story, and like, when a character gets their eye ripped out, you're like, oh my god. But then you still go back and play every single time. Like, if you explain the story, the idea of Corpse Party, yeah, a bunch of kids get trapped into a hellish prison paranormal school, and they're tortured and brutally murdered by the ghosts of children. Like, that sounds pretty, like, nobody's gonna be like, I want that game.
It's just like Danganronpa, right?
Right, yeah. You have to show them why they want it, and you have to show them, like, how cool the thing can be for them to be like, oh, actually, that sounds awesome. So hopefully I'm doing the right things here, and I'm trying. We're really trying to get it right. I don't know if I am. I'm kind of bad at that stuff, so we'll see. Hence why I'm not allowed on social media.
Well, I'm excited because, like, just hearing about your influences and the type of stuff that you're into, sounds right up my alley. And that's the reason I was so eager to get you onto our podcast and be able to talk with you a little bit. Because when I saw the Kickstarter and I started reading a little bit about it, I don't know, I stumbled across it by accident, but I'm glad I did. And I think I stumbled across it actually the first day it went live. And I said to Matt, I got to have this guy on the show. This game just looks phenomenal, and this looks like something that I really hope gets backed, because it's right up my alley. It's something that drives me to play. I love playing games like this. I love games that do something different, something that's, as you mentioned, that's not so standard for the industry and is willing to take a risk. And I think the fact that you got funded so quickly, I think there's a lot of people out there who see that too. And I think I saw you, and this might have been, I think I recall you tweeted out about Vita fan base too, being a rabid fan base. Or maybe you might have commented, I think, on the campaign itself with somebody. But I think that's also a big driving point for me and the other 10 people who own a Vita. Is is we love having those smaller games and those games that we can play on there, and so I'm super excited.
Yeah, no, I'm excited too. I mean, I think this looks. It's not exactly my bag, but like you said, like, you know, give them something to, you know, and like show them, right? You know what I mean? Like I wasn't that big of a fan of Nier Automata, but you know, after I played the demo, I was like, it's not really for me. And then Rob just kept like, dude, this is really awesome. You gotta play this. You gotta play this. You know, play through it once, or, you know, play through it twice, play through it 3 times, because that's where it really gets going, and really, like, you know, you really kind of delve into what's going on. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it'll be an exciting game to play for sure.
Well, thank you very much. I you know, very kind words, and I really appreciate it. It's one of those things where when we got funded, I slept immediately for about 2 days because, and I wasn't even that tired. I just slept. I was just like, I don't even know how to take this. It was really uplifting, and I really appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate everybody that's backed already, because it's one of those things when you can't convince a studio to hire you, and you go, but people want what I want or what I'm making, and that's really it's heavy. It's a good heavy, but it's heavy, and you go, okay, I'm gonna make sure each and every one of these people knows that I'm making this not just because I want to, but for you guys to enjoy. So I really appreciate it, and I can tease one extra thing.
Ooh!
If we get, so the $40,000 stretch goal is, I think that's our last one, right?
I think and then after that, it's
so the 40,000 stretch goal is Japan 1975, and if we hit that, something awesome happens, and I can't say what, but let's push that. if everybody can help us get to that stretch goal, it's not about, again, I'm not going to get much of a paycheck from this until we start selling the game. So this is not about filling my pockets yet. It's about me making something so freaking cool that I'm like really, that's like been my goal. So if you know, you guys share it out. If you've backed it already, share it with all your friends. If you won't want us to miss that stretch goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do encourage everybody to check this out. That listens to this, and you know, even if you've checked out or already pledged to it, you know, this is still great to listen to, get an idea of where Ben's taking this. Ben, I do have one request though.
Absolutely.
And Matt probably knows what it is. If you get to the
trophies,
yes, if you get to the PlayStation element, we need a platinum trophy, because I just have a real issue with a game that doesn't have a platinum trophy.
I can say I have no idea how it works, but that is absolutely something that I intend to put in, because it's just like, I thought it was just something that you do anyway. Like I agree.
Right.
I've never gotten a platinum trophy, legitimately. I have a couple hundred games. I've never gotten one.
Oh wow.
But it was not something that I was like, yeah, I have to do trophies, and there's going to be trophies for like stupid things too. So it'll be like, getting that platinum will be an exercise in annoyance for a couple of them. So enjoy
I'm
that.
fine
But
with
yes,
that,
there
as
will
long
be
as there's a platinum.
Believe me, Rob loves those kind of annoyances. He loves getting through those.
I do.
Well, I'll add a couple extra just for you then.
Perfect. Yeah, that's my only request, because I play all types of independent games. I play everything on my PlayStation. But Matt knows from this podcast every week that when we look at some of the trophies for some of the games, I will gripe if it does not have a platinum, because if you're going to make me earn stuff, I want that shiny extra one that says I did everything, you know?
Easy enough. I have no idea how it works, but we will figure it out, and I will absolutely put a platinum in there.
That's all we need. That's all. All right. Well, this has been, a conversation with developer here, Ben Widdowson, and this is for his game Project Sense, the Cyberpunk story. We appreciate you guys stopping by and listening.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ben.
That wraps that up, Matt. Pretty good stuff, I think.
Yeah, that was awesome. I learned a lot from that, which is pretty interesting to kind of go through like that genre for me. Because again, I'm not like super into the horror stuff, but I mean, it looks amazing. Because
it scares you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a scaredy cat when it comes to games. I mean, I can deal with horror movies or whatever. I've seen them. We used to work in a movie theater. I've seen them a bunch. But yeah, it was when you're actually like controlling the character, it's a lot different.
Yeah, and so guys, if you really need to go check this out if you haven't already. If you're listening to this and you've already backed it, up your pledge, because Ben really deserves it. he gave us a few goodies we won't spoil, but let's just say that he's got a lot of stuff in the pipeline for you. And so the more you can back this, the more you're going to get out of it. I promise. It's going to go a long way. And so it is Project Sense. It is a Cyberpunk Ghost Story, a 2.5D cyberpunk horror game that he says is inspired by Fatal Frame and Clock Tower. You can't go wrong with that there, with a story that mixes technology and Cantonese traditions. It is probably the only, and again, he's offered this during the interview, correct us if we're wrong, but probably the only cyberpunk horror game out there. You can't get much better than that. So definitely head over to Kickstarter. You can find that in the link to our YouTube. You can find it in our Soundcloud, all our different, our Patreon links as well. So stop over there, follow us on there too. If you want to drop $1 our way, that's great. If you're an indie developer and you want to kind of check us out, head over to our Patreon, listen to our past interviews. We've got lots of good stuff coming down the pipeline, so we really want to make it the best you can. And so anything you donate towards us also helps us get more developers on the show and maybe some voice actors and maybe even some big publishers eventually too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as of this recording, he's only a little over $800 away from the stretch goal of being on PS4 and PS Vita digital. So, I mean,
Vita,
it's so
you can't
close.
go wrong.
There's as of this recording, 3 weeks left on his time limit. I mean, at least help him get there, because that's awesome to be able to be onto PlayStation.
Yeah, listen, guys, Vita. Okay, they don't even make games for the Vita anymore. He promised us a platinum trophy too, or that he would look into it. All right, go back this damn game. I'm telling you.
I love how I'm like PS4 and Rob's like, Vita, please, I need another game for Vita.
I'm tired of playing Deadbolt. I love it, but I need a new Vita game. Damn it. All right, guys. Danganronpa is only going to last me so long. So thanks again to Ben for stopping by. We're going to have him again when the game comes out. So thanks again, Ben. Until next time, guys, game on.
Game on. This is the spooky outro music. It's spooky because of a horror genre.
That was the best one yet.